some brief kind of background comments about the company and how we got to where we are, and then we'll jump right into it. So for those of you who aren't familiar perhaps with Genscape, we are a global provider of fundamental data in various commodity markets. I'd say our core mission is really to bring transparency to commodity markets. The company was founded a little over 12 years ago by two power traders who were really frustrated by the lack of fundamental data on what power plants were doing. And so they developed a patented technology to monitor the real-time output of power plants and flows on power lines. And so many of you may be familiar with the Power RT service, which was kind of our original flagship service and is still being used by pretty much every real-time trading desk across the U.S. and Europe. Since then, we've expanded in a number of different directions, both in terms of new commodities, natural gas, oil, agriculture, and so forth, but also within the power space into what we call market intelligence. And we are, I'd say, the leading provider of fundamental market intelligence, particularly focused on the short term for all the deregulated power markets. PJM, MISO, ERCOT, NEPOOL, New York, CAISO, WEC. And for the large trading shops, and a lot of them are more the financial trading shops and investment banks and so forth, we give them very detailed daily reports showing all the fundamentals: demand, wind, fuel prices, congestion, and obviously power prices, along with daily analyst briefings. More recently, we've really shifted focus into serving not so much the pure trading clients, but serving physical participants in these markets. Obviously, for traders, they're looking for trading opportunities. They love kind of taking on risk when it's in their favor, but we recognize that the risk profile of someone like an industrial or a utility or a retailer is very different. What you guys are looking for is a way to manage your risks, to minimize your risks, to get better visibility into the market drivers and understand what's moving the market and whether it's a transient event or likely to persist. And ultimately, especially for those on the load serving side, you're looking to reduce your supply costs. So that's really what PowerBuyer was developed for. We first developed ERCOT PowerBuyer at the beginning of last year, and we did it really in partnership with several retailers who helped us at the outset, explaining their buying process, what they were looking for as a tool to help inform that buying process. And we released the ERCOT PowerBuyer service in Q1 of last year. It's been extremely well received by the market, exceeding our expectations. And we've now got over 20 of the leading retailers, utilities, industrials, even merchant wind operators, merchant generation using it. You can see here just a sampling of the clients who are using it. And based on that success, they really encouraged us to expand what we were doing in ERCOT to PJM. So, the rest of the webinar will really focus in on what the PJM PowerBuyer service is. It's designed to be an easy-to-use service, but I don't want to give you the impression that it's a simple service. There's a lot of detail. There's a lot of rigor under the hood. We unlike perhaps some other tools that you might be familiar with, this is not a statistical model. It's not just looking at historical prices, historical demand, and extrapolating forward what future prices and demand will be. Essentially what we're doing is replicating what the system operator does, understanding the transmission grid and building into the model all the transmission lines, over 12,000 transmission lines and transformers, building into the model over 1,200 generators. Obviously, we've got the advantage that Genscape is monitoring the majority of those generators. An important thing is that we also understand the historical bidding behavior of those generators. And so that really helps us. It's not an economic model, but it's just looking at fuel prices as the basis for how they're going to bid. And then we recalibrate daily based on what we're seeing in terms of actual prices. And at this point, I'd like to actually turn it over to my colleague Brian to maybe explain a little bit more about how the PJM team does that daily process.
Great, thanks, Hudson. So kind of to pick up where Hudson left off, I mean, one of the most important processes that we go through on the PJM desk is that recalibration process. So what we do is we get in very early in the morning over here. We get in by 5:30, 6 o'clock Eastern time and start looking at what happened yesterday in the market. We'll then take the output of all the generators that we monitor, and we'll make sure that output matches what actually happens in the model. The other key to our process is our demand forecasting. We hire meteorologists internally who forecast their own demand. It's a predictive neural builder, neural net model, and the meteorologist will then go in and review and make some fine-tunes to the final forecast. As part of the PowerBuyer service that we'll show you in a little bit, you have access to not only the forecasts themselves, but also the meteorologists. If there's a specific region that you're interested in and you have some questions, you have access to our meteorologists, and they can kind of walk you through that region or zone and where we're anticipating there may be some additional risk. In addition, the other piece that's really critical to the PJM market that I'm sure can definitely sneak up on some of the specific zones is congestion. And we have at a minimum 2 analysts focused on the PJM congestion every morning. We'll look at what's happened in the previous day. We'll identify what the drivers of that congestion were, what the impacts on the various zones within PJM are, and then we'll go ahead and try to identify whether those risks are still in place for the coming days, and that's something we look to communicate to you as well in the PowerBuyer product. And that final piece of the process is going to be our analysis. Once we take the demand, we take all of the previous day's data, we take our congestion analysis, we run through the model, we get our output, and then we provide our own analysis on it. And we try to get a firm grasp on what the output actually is telling us. And most importantly for this product, identifying where there are opportunities, where the real-time may be an advantageous play, or identify some areas where the real-time is especially risky, and where if that's something that you are looking to take some of that power into the real-time. Time risks for both the bell day, the next day. Lindsay is one of our head meteorologists that'll look at the PJM market. Nico, Diana, and Rod are all focused on the congestion and the weekly product that we put out as well. And the weekly product does roll into the PowerBuyer service, which I believe Hudson will show you a little bit of in a few minutes. The most important other part of the service is, while this is the crew that's going to be putting out the reports, we like to think of these products as kind of a ongoing process throughout the day. It's not just we hit a button and send you this report. We're available all for the remainder of the morning, for the afternoon. If there's a specific constraint or if there's a specific pop in the zone that's important to you, you have the ability to email, call, or IM us, and we'll get right on that and kind of help you identify what's driving that price spike or what's driving the lack of any sort of price separation, and then give you an idea of what to expect ahead.
Yeah, so just to add to what Brian's saying, I mean, I think the way that a lot of our clients interact with the analysts is they see something happen in the market, and really they're trying to understand, is this going to continue? So let's take a real example from yesterday. We saw a lot of heat in ComEd around Chicago, and it drove up prices. I think they hit almost $170 in the real time. And so that's a valid question. If you've got load in Chicago, what was the cause of that? Was that just due to weather? Was it due to a transmission outage or nukes getting shut off? Is that likely to persist into today and tomorrow, or is it not something that you need to worry about going forward?
Great. Yeah. That's dead on. And even to add on to that, in terms of some stuff that's going on as we speak, we've got some questions from customers about MedEd specifically. It's a zone that's kind of taken off in the day ahead today, and then we've seen even bigger upside just over the last hour or two. And it seems like our driver that we've attributed to is that Peach Bottom nuke has come offline for their fall outage, and it's kind of been probably 1 week too early, because we're getting this extreme heat in the Mid-Atlantic and specifically Med-Ed, and the lack of that nuke online is driving prices up quite a bit. So that would be the type of question that we'd be dealing with on a daily basis, and something that we'd look to help our customers understand.
So moving along, just to kind of frame how PowerBuyer can be used, there's really kind of 3 time dimensions that it's focused on trying to give you more visibility on. First is the next day, really looking hour by hour at tomorrow's day ahead and real-time prices for all the different PJM zones. And then we give you a separate tab that looks intra-month. It's looking out to the next couple weeks and really trying to highlight your volumetric risk. So it's assuming if you're putting a hedge in or buying power based on seasonal temperatures, seasonal typical demand, this is going to show you where those anomalies are, and we'll demo that. And then third is seasonal and perhaps structural changes. So as a client, you would get access to quarterly seasonal outlooks. We actually just did one for the fall, and if anyone who's on the call is interested, we'd be happy to send you a link to that archived event. But for example, when First Energy joined PJM, we did a special webinar talking about the impact of that and how the footprint changes and what that could be doing to prices going forward. So again, that's part of the service. So what I'd next like to do is actually just jump into the reports so you can see what they look like if the technology will cooperate. Here we go. So the way you receive this, this comes via email. Essentially, each morning by about 10:15 Eastern Time, you would get an email with a link, and you click on that, and it brings you to our website where you can see the latest report. The first page is what we call prices, drivers, and risks, and it's really giving you that look to tomorrow. The And the place, if you're going to start and only read one thing, you look in that top left box at the analyst summary. And again, I'm going to ask Brian to jump in here and just maybe kind of explain when we went out with this report this morning, what we were looking at and advising clients for tomorrow.
Sure. So on this first slide, one of the big things that we're as Hudson said, we're really trying to identify where are the real risks for the day. And when you get into a day like tomorrow and a touch of today, you have some fairly extreme heat for this time of year, and you have temperatures pushing into the mid-90s in the mid-Atlantic, maybe touching the high 80s, low 90s in ComEd in the west. A lot of cooling load that a lot of the zones face a good amount of risk. But what we did look at for a day like tomorrow is that we see, while you're seeing a lot of heat and cooling load today in the western half of PJM and a good amount in the mid-Atlantic today, that pattern kind of works its way east as we get further into the day tomorrow. And so the way we kind of looked at the day is that there are certain zones during the afternoon and midday hours that we think are significantly risky in terms of the potential to see some real-time spikes and some real-time dispatch. Those are mostly your eastern zones, your PICO, your PPL, TSEG, BGE, PEPCO, DOM, and then especially DPL and MED-ED. All those eastern load zones we feel have a good amount of real-time risk tomorrow. While we think the day ahead is still likely to clear over $100 for most, if not all, of those zones, the potential for real-time redispatch in them is significant, considering the amount of generation we expect to see in the supply stack. So in this commentary, that's really what we're trying to highlight and identify to everyone. Then as you kind of scroll down and you work...
So just before we move, on the right-hand side, you're seeing our demand forecast, and that's in the green. You're seeing that overlaid with PJM's forecast, which is in the black. We're pretty much in line with them, a little higher in the morning, a little lower over the peak. And then the dotted blue line is just a reference for our demand forecast for today, the balance of day. So as Brian said, because we're seeing that heat move out of the western part of the PJM footprint and into the eastern zones, what you see is in this graph we're showing you our forecasted prices for both day ahead and real time. Day ahead is the gray line, real time is the black. Charted against the left y-axis, and as you can see, these are healthy prices. Getting up into certainly triple digits, and then the bars are the forecasted DART spread. So what you can see is for ComEd, and we can see the same thing essentially for ATSI. There is an opportunity to put your load, let your load go into the real time because you're seeing a differential of, $30 to $60 for those afternoon peak hours. Whereas as you move further east into the zones like PICO and BGE and PSEG, you're seeing that the real-time risk really outweighs any opportunity for you to shift load out of probably your default strategy, which is day ahead, into real time. So that's really quite consistent with what we're saying in the commentary up top.
Yes, that's great. And then to backtrack on just to the demand piece, well, the first what we're going to show is we're going to dial in a little bit more into the demand in a moment. Actually, we could probably do that right now, right?
Yep.
So the second tab we have is the weather, demand, and generation. And so as I mentioned, Lindsay is our head meteorologist on the PJM desk, and she'll provide commentary for the Mid-Atlantic, the South, ComEd, and the West regions. Basically, that's how PJM tends to separate them out based on their load forecasting. But what we show you here is we give you a look at the supply stack. You can see how thin we start to get at the top, getting into some actual oil and some of the other type generation, some of the GTs at the top of the supply stack that indicate that you're more likely to see volatility in the real time, especially. But then we get into the different regions of PJM and what the actual forecasts are, and this is where I think you can get even more granular and more information, and this is something we like to look at a lot when we get into our analysis. So when you look at the eastern part of PJM, you see the dotted line in the top left here. That's the BAL day forecast for today, whereas on the top you see tomorrow's next day forecast, or the forecast for tomorrow. So you can see a significant increase in our forecasted demand day over day, indicating that today we already know has some potential for volatility. Tomorrow shows that there might even be greater risk. Now, as you work your way down to ComEd in the bottom right-hand chart, you see the dotted line is significantly above the solid lines. And so where we take that's where we get into the analysis that, hey, there may be some more opportunity in the real time tomorrow, that the day ahead may clear significantly stronger than the real time, because you'll have that much less demand forecasted for tomorrow. So I don't know if you want to get into the table pieces.
No, I mean the tables are basically just giving you that same data and showing you the differential between our forecast and PJM's, but it's essentially the data that's in those charts above. So today's report, which looks at tomorrow, it's largely a weather story and also some unit unavailability, but it really varies day to day. Sometimes congestion is the main driver of where your opportunity and risk are. The next tab we won't spend a whole lot of time on, but this, we're really focused on being as transparent as possible, showing you every day how we did on the previous day, and that's partly so that we get better and better, and partly just so you can see what actually happened. So this will give you how we did on demand, how we did on pricing, all the way down to the zonal level. And then the last tab here is looking out a little further. So this, one of the things that we've heard as we develop this product from some of the retailers is that they're essentially trying to be as flat in terms of their position as possible coming into the month. And so obviously you've got a load obligation that you've got to serve. You're going to go to the term markets. You're going to essentially hedge that load with generation, but you're probably doing that based on seasonal weather and seasonal demand. And we know that the actual demand often differs from seasonal demand, and so this is a tool to really give you visibility. And again, this is driven by our neural network and the team of meteorologists that we've got. It's looking out to the next couple weeks and identifying, essentially comparing the forecasted demand based on forecasted weather with seasonal demand. So the dotted blue line is demand using 14-year average temperatures in PJM. And then the solid blue line is demand based on the forecasted temperatures. And as Brian said, we're seeing unusually hot weather today and starting to tail off a bit through the end of the week. But that creates a huge differential between what you might have hedged and what you're actually going to be on the hook for in terms of your load position. So you're coming in very short, up to 50% short for tomorrow. So this can help you understand and give you a mechanism to potentially go to the bilateral markets or go to the BAL week or next week market to cover some of that exposure. And then obviously we've got the weather commentary on the left. And then here we're showing both average and peak load, and how it differs day by day. So going back to the slides here, I wanted to just ask Brian to maybe give an example of something that we saw a few months ago, and this was kind of a major congestion event that occurred in PJM. Certainly, when we compare the PowerBuyer service that we offer in ERCOT with what we offer in PJM, complexity is really the big differentiator, and congestion is the big differentiator here. So this is something that the analyst team was able to alert our clients to, and we can just show you how this was delivered, communicated.
Sure. So as Hudson had mentioned, we do the furthest thing out we do are the seasonal outlooks, and one of the things we do in that is we look at upcoming outages. And last October, when we were looking at outages for the upcoming winter, we identified a line outage in PSEG that we felt could have some significant impact. We did a slide, and we showed kind of the way power flows in and around PSEG, and you really have, I think of it as three ways to move power into PSEG and the main load pocket there. You can move it in from the north, from New York, along some of the tie lines there. You can move it in from the west on lines like this Roseland-Whippany line, or you can move it up from the south on the lines like Reddington-Roseland. And when we looked at that, when you think about the winter, you know that New York will tend to be colder. There'll be less opportunity for power to flow back down into New Jersey. And we also knew that this Roseland to Whippany line was going out of service. So we identified this Reddington-Roseland path, this south to north path, up into the major load pocket of PSEG as a potential risk, that red line that you see there in the kind of bottom left-hand part. So we identified and talked about that in our October presentation for the upcoming winter. We identified it as an upside risk for PSEG. And then as we kind of got into the month of January, you can see on the bottom there's some quotes from some of the reports that we put out identifying that Reddington-Roseland as a risk. And now showing the actual impact on the prices, you can see the top chart you're looking at, the red line is showing your real-time price, the blue line is showing your day ahead. You can see as we kind of got into the month of January, we were pretty steady, just day ahead over real time, or pretty much flat the whole time. The line went out on the 18th or late on the day on the 17th, and then on the 19th we started to see a spike, and then every day for that week we saw PSEG real time clearing significantly above the day ahead, and then it culminated with the January 23rd where the real time in PSEG cleared $70 above the day ahead. So this is something and the bottom piece that you're seeing is part of our Power RT. We actually now have a new product called Transmission RT, which monitors transmission line is being monitored by us, so we could watch. On the left, you can see power flowing along the line. You can see that January 18th date where the flows drop off, and you can see the power prices spike coincide pretty nicely with the line going out of service. So the way I really like to think about it is this is a situation where, if you're looking at your winter and you're looking at your position in January, and you say, we have a certain amount of load in PSEG, and on average, we end up needing to go into the real time for X amount of megawatts. I think this would be a good example of where we can help out and provide some good color in terms of where and when those risks may occur, and it may allow you to transact a little bit earlier and get a little advanced idea of where you can go ahead and hedge the load that you need to pick up for the coming months.
Thanks, Brian. So just to summarize, the PJM PowerBuyer service, it includes the daily reports that go out with the email link to the website, just as we showed here. They're giving you day-ahead and real-time pricing for all 19 PJM zones. It does give you the analyst commentary, really highlighting those best kind of risk-reward opportunities to shift your load from the day ahead to the real time. You do get access to the seasonal outlook webinars, as well as any other client-only events for PJM clients. We do also offer an XML data feed. Some of our clients like to, essentially pull that data directly into their systems in order to have the history and make decisions or drive the bidding decisions. And then, of course, perhaps most importantly, access to the analyst team, the PJM analyst team, and that's via phone, email, and IM. If anyone is interested, we'd be glad to set up trials, complimentary, no-obligation trials of the PJM PowerBuyer service. We are seeing a fair bit of demand, so I would encourage you to contact myself or my colleague Melissa sooner rather than later, just so we can get you in earlier. And I'll just give you our contact information. And I know we did kind of open it up to any audience submitted questions. Jamie, do we have any questions that came in?
Yep, we have a few questions. Hold on one second.
So one question that may be answered, which I'll kind of preempt, is we'd be happy to send a PDF of these slides to anyone who participated. So we can get those out either today or tomorrow.
Okay, so we have a few questions here. Does the report cover weekends?
It does not right now. With our ERCOT PowerBuyer service, we started out providing reports Monday through Friday, and this was actually one of the top kind of questions that we got from clients or requests that we got from them. And I'm happy to say that we actually now offer weekend coverage for the ERCOT service. So, I suspect, and then Brian may not want to hear this, but I suspect sometime in the not-so-distant future we will be adding weekend coverage, but at least right now it's focused on the on-peak Monday through Friday period.
Somebody asked, I only see prices for 5 zones. What about the others?
That's a good question. So right now we cover ATSI, ComEd, BGE, PSEG, and PICO, I believe. We do model and publish prices for all 19 zones, but we don't put the other 14 in the report just because it becomes kind of unwieldy. So those are available via the XML feed. They still run off the exact same model, but when we worked with customers to develop the service, they really felt like by identifying those 5 zones as well as West Hub and East Hub, that was covering 75+% of the retail load in PJM. And frankly, a lot of those zones are pretty good proxies for their neighboring zones. So it gives you a pretty representative indication of where the lion's share of the load is.
Do you have performance data to track your accuracy?
We do, and that's when we showed that performance tab, we're actually kind of on a daily basis showing you exactly what we forecast for yesterday and what the actuals were that came out. We also do things like we very carefully track our the performance of our demand forecast, what we call mean average percent error, and that consistently outperforms both PJM and other third-party providers. So short answer is yes.
I think that's all the questions we have. If you have any more, you can feel free to email Hudson or Melissa through the email provided on the PowerPoint. We encourage you to take the survey at the end of the webinar. It helps us improve our future webinars. So if Hudson or Brian has anything else to say, I think we just want to thank you for joining us today, and we will be sending you the slides and recording.
Okay, thanks everyone for taking the time to join us today.